Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another series preview episode. We are now heading into the conference finals in the LMSHL Season 5 playoffs and the AHL Season 2 AHL playoffs. So just to get everyone caught back up again on the brackets, we'll take a look at the NHL bracket first, and we'll take a look at the AHL one in just a second. So in the East, we have Philadelphia taking on Tampa Bay, and then we have LA taking on Detroit. And then in the AHL, we still have the same three teams that we had last week before Game 7 on Friday between Laval and Syracuse. So Syracuse won Game 7, and they'll be taking on Utica, and Ontario will be taking on Grand Rapids in the West. So those are the matchups heading into this week, the Final Four in each league in the NHL and AHL. So what we're going to do now is just take a look at all the series, all four of them, NHL and AHL, and do a deep dive on everything, and I'll give my thoughts, my analysis, and of course, my predictions. So we'll get right into it. So I imagine this is going to be a bit of a longer video, just because I really want to do each series justice. I want everyone to be fully caught up on the numbers and all of that stuff. So obviously, I will, of course, have the timestamps. So if you only want to listen to your team, feel free to look in the description or on the slide bar and check out your team and your series. But buckle up, because I have lots of things to say and lots of numbers to look at and lots of thoughts to give. All right. So with all that in mind, let's kick it off with the NHL. And we will start in the Eastern Conference. So we'll start with Tampa Bay, third seed Tampa Bay taking on the seventh seeded Philadelphia Flyers. So the first thing I'd like to do is take a look at the tail of the tape for this Eastern Conference final, okay? So we're going to go through all these numbers, and I'll give you my thoughts on them. So in the season head-to-head, Tampa Bay was a perfect 6-0 against Philadelphia. Flyers having 5 regulation losses and 1 overtime loss. Of course, Tampa Bay finished third in the East. Philly finished 7th. How have they gotten here so far? So Tampa Bay has defeated the 6th-seeded Penguins 4-1. That was a 5-game series. And then they took down the 8th-seeded Maple Leafs, also in a 5-game series. So a pair of 4-1 victories in the series for Tampa Bay as they steamroll into the conference final. At this point, they have had to play the 6th, the 8th, now the 7th seed. So the highest seeded team they've had to play to get to the Cup final has been the Penguins in the first round. So an interesting way to think about that, with both Boston and Hartford being knocked out in the first round. So if we look at things from Philadelphia's side, of course, they finished 7th. They took down number 2 Hartford, like I just mentioned. So they took them out in the first round, and then they just took down 5th-seeded Washington in a sweep. So really good stuff all around for Philly. Both teams in the East having some quick series, none of them going past the 5th game. So these are all the numbers on that bottom half here are all playoff numbers. So Tampa Bay so far in their, 5 and 10 games, they have 3.5 goals for per game, and they are only giving up 1.9 goals against per game. So they have a plus 16 goal differential. And meanwhile, and for Philly, they have 3.22 goals for and a stellar 1.56 goals against per game. So really great defense from Philly, something that was probably not expected heading into this series, but nonetheless, they are getting it done. So leading the way for Tampa Bay in the playoffs so far has been Contrix. He's got 15 points. And for Philly, it's been Laser Noobs, who has 13 points. And some really strong defensive play from Lane, 55. He has a 98.33 defensive rating. And Winksta for Philly, he has a 92.0 rating. And then in between the pipes, this is where this series will really be interesting to watch. Both goalies, Rucchini for Tampa Bay and Lil Big Poppy for Philly, both goalies 8-1 in these playoffs so far, only 1 loss. Rucchini with a 1.22 goals against, Big Poppy with a 1.44 goals against, and a 906 save percentage for Rucchini and a 908 for Big Poppy. So really, really strong goaltending for both of these teams so far in the first 2 rounds. We'll see if it can continue in the conference final. So that's the main numbers to look at. So now we'll go deep dive. Oops, that's not what I wanted to click. I wanted to go to player leaders. I want to check out the playoff performers so far in here. So we'll go to playoffs, and then we'll go to the skating stats here. So we'll go points, and then we'll look at Tampa Bay first, and then we'll go to the Flyers in just a second. So leading the way, like I said, Kontrick's, he's got 15 points in 5 games. No Blood's got 13 points in 4 games. JD's got 12 and 5. Trickster's got 10 and 5. So really strong contributions. Shelby's got 9 and 3. So you're seeing a lot of great contributions up and down the lineup here. Tampa Bay's got a really solid forward core here that they can utilize against the Flyers. On the back end here, I'll sort it by defensive rating just to give you an idea. Like I said, Lane here with 98.33 rating. Let me go back this way. Here we go. If we just go, like I know Contracts plays forward, but Def Shark, he's a defenseman. He's got an 84 rating. So Sniper No Swiper, I think he might be a defenseman. He's got an 81.67. So really strong numbers here. I'll just sort by defense. Yeah, he does. There we go. So you can see the contributions from the Lightning defenseman here. Their lowest defenseman that has a defensive rating is a 73.75, and that's still very good, very serviceable for Tampa Bay. So you can see their strengths is on the back end on the blue line here with these 5 guys. And a lot of you guys have played in the AHL too, so they're getting a lot of ice time in both the NHL and AHL. And then for the Flyers, we'll go to them next. We'll sort by points again. We all know that the top of the lineup is really strong. Laser Noob, Silky Aim, Punisher. These 3 guys, they'll put on a show for sure. So it'll really be interesting to see the 2 strengths of these teams. The Flyers' offense versus Tampa Bay's defense, and their goaltending at that as well, which will come out on top. That will ultimately decide the series, of course. And then after their top line, they're still getting a lot of good depth contributions as well. Darth Deemer, Rudes, and Big Beef God, they're right behind these guys. Same with Paul. And, these 4 guys are really contributing as well. If we just go to the defense for now. Sorry, Big Beef God is a defenseman. Paul plays on that second line, I believe. So if we go here, it's 1, 2, 3 is a line, and then Darth Deemer, Rudes, and I believe Paul, I think, hops in. Big Beef God, and then these 3 guys down here. That's your playoff roster, essentially, if I'm understanding this correctly, because I think, if we go to defense, yeah, you got 4 defensemen. So, and really, K-Max has only played 2 games, so it's really essentially a 9-man roster. K-Max fills in. Looks like he's played a couple games, maybe one night. So if that's how you want to think about it, Philly has really solid 2 lines and a really good defensive core as well. These guys, Winks, I mentioned him a couple minutes ago. He's got a 92 defensive rating, so really solid for him. Shadow with an 80. K-Max only played 2 games, but 77.5 is still very serviceable. And Big Beef God with a 77, but that's the lowest, and it barely the lowest, still very good. But he also has 7 points, so he leads the defenseman in points. So great contributions in different ways as well. You look at some of these giveaway, takeaway, interceptions. Winks is giving up the puck a lot, but he's playing excellent defense, so you can't be mad at that. And these guys down here, same thing with Shadow, giving up the puck a bit. Okay, oops, I hit on my mouse. There we go. Giving up the puck. Okay, sure, but 80 defensive rating is very good. And then you look down here like Big Beef God, he's putting up points, and he has a great ratio of takeaways, interceptions to giveaways. So, and same thing with K-Max. He's only played a couple games, but look at that. He's got 21 combined takeaways and interceptions to only 5 giveaways. Very good. So, you look at, can Philly's defense hold up is my big question. If we go back to the Lightning again, we go back to their defense, just sorted by this. These guys are essentially running 5 defensemen. You have Dev Shark with 5, Toiki with 5, and then these guys too have 3, 3, and 4. But you will look at the same things I was just looking at with the Philly deep. Takeaways, interceptions to giveaway ratio. This is positive. This is very much positive. I know Dev Shark, I think he was on Detroit, and if I remember correctly, he was more of a defensive defenseman. He's 3 points in 5 games, a real solid ratio here. I believe that's like a 2.5 because 31 plus 14 is, I believe, 45. divide that by 20, it's like 2.5 or something like that. I don't. Math is hard mentally, but still very very good ratios. All up and down. Toiki, I know he likes to carry the puck a lot, so it's not surprising to see a lot of giveaways, but the interceptions and the takeaways they make up for, and 79 defensive rating is still solid, and that to think that's fourth on his team, that's incredible. And same thing with Trigonometry. All these guys have positive ratios. I feel like that's a good key to look at, is the ratio positive. And for defensemen, it should be. So this is really nice to look at. I truly think it's going to come down. It's going to come down to the defensemen on both sides. Obviously Philly has Winksta. They have Shadow, but can they match up with Lane, Death Shark, Toiki, like these guys, Sniper, Trigonomics, like all these guys, and these guys are going to play. Philly's got, I think, 3, I think I said, defensemen. Let's see. Defense. Yeah, K-Max played 2 games, but these are their main guys. Big Beef God, he's leading their team. They're leading the team in defensemen and points. Can these 4 match up against Tampa's core? And that's really the big question, because I think the Flyers probably have an edge on offense, just a touch. Because you look at the top end talent here. Laser, Silky, Pun, and then you go Darth Deemer, Rudes, Paul. And then if we compare it, though, we go to Tampa Bay. We'll go here. We'll go by points. Contrix, Snowblood, JD. I'm pretty sure their line I watched the other night was Contrix, JD, Shelfie. Okay, and then you probably go Snowblood, Trickster, Controller Hero, perhaps. Or Cornsby, one of these guys down here, and then your defense and round it out back on the back end there. So I just think Philly has a slight edge on the forwards, but I also think Tampa Bay has a slight edge on defense. And then I think the goalies are essentially a wash, and because both have played outstanding. We'll go to the player leaders again for the goalies now. Go playoffs here. We'll look at Philly. Big Poppy, he's played all 9 games for them, 8-1. Like I said, 144 goals against, 908 save percentage here. That's just terrific. And then we go to Tampa Bay. I'm pretty sure Rucchini's played all but 2 games. 1 game. Random game played 1 game. So Rucchini's also, he's got 8-1, 122, 906 save percentage. I think Random Gamer, he had a tough one. And this is the Toronto game that they got blown out in game 4 in the second round. So this is kind of an anomaly, I think. You kind of toss that one out. Focus on the Rucchini stats here. He's clearly the starter for Tampa Bay. He's played excellent. So I would be all right. I'm all right with just calling this a wash, because the numbers are nearly identical, and you can't get much better than this either, in my opinion. So when you think about the 3 position groups, forwards, defense, and goaltending, you give the edge to forwards to Philadelphia. You give the edge to defense to Tampa Bay, and then I think it's a wash in net between these 2 teams. So that leads me to my prediction. So who do I think is going to win this series? Well, before I tell you who I think is going to win, I think the series goes 6 or 7 games. There's no way in my mind that this series ends in 5. And there's no way it's a sweep, I don't think. But if I had to give you my official prediction on who's going to win this series, are you ready for this? I'm going to say that I predict that the Tampa Bay Lightning win this series in 6 games. That's right. I think Tampa Bay takes this series in 6. And just hear me out for just a second. And I know what's going to happen when the Philly guys hear this. I'm going to get chirped in players chat. I might not. They're probably happy I'm doing this, because I think Paul told me a couple hours ago that Tampa in 6, and when I read that, I'm like, oh, he's actually right. But this is why I think Tampa is going to ultimately win. I think defense wins championships essentially. I trust Tampa Bay's defense more than I trust Philadelphia's. Now, that's not a knock on Winksta, Shadow, Big Beef, none of those guys. I think they're great players. I just think the depth of Tampa Bay's will lead them to more wins. Now, Can I envision a scenario where Philly just blows the brakes off of Tampa? Yes. I think the only way this series does not go at least 6 is if Philly just runs Tampa Bay out of the yard. Like I don't think there's any other scenario other than let's just look at Philly in the previous rounds. 4-2, 2-1, 4-1, 3-1. I mean, these are not like that crazy of scores, but if we go, even looking in the first round with Philly against Hartford, 5-3, 2-1, 3-1. They lose this one 2-1, close game, and then 5-2. Like, they're not even like blowing teams out. Like I think 5-2 and 5-3 is like a pretty, like they're putting up 5 goals. The defense is what is surprised me this so far. I did not think their defense could play this well, and I'm not sure how the lack of depth will lead them. Again, I am not trying to say these guys are bad players at all. I could very easily imagine a situation where it's Game 7 and Philly wins. Now, I will say this. If Tampa Bay, they need to win Game 6 because anyone can play Game 7. I think Philly actually wins that. I think because if you go best on best, right, goalies are a wash, all right? Defense, I mean, all right, so again, we'll go back. If you're going to put up Winksta and Big, because Winksta will play, and then either put Big Beef God or Shadow, and you pick your poison in the last two, but Winksta definitely plays. And then you want to put out, if you're Tampa Bay, we'll go to the playoff stats again, just to hammer home this point. If you're Tampa Bay in a Game 7, I imagine the line, if everyone's available, right, I imagine the line will be something along the lines of Contrix, No Blood, Trickster. Any one of these top like 4 or 5 forwards here, I think you'll see in a Game 7. But I really want to hammer home the defense. So if you go to the defense, right, just what we were just talking about in the last couple of minutes here, if you got Winksta and Big Beef, right, just for example, if you have those two, do you trust them over a Lane and a Death Shark or a Toiki and Trigonomics? Again, no offense to these guys, but I think I got to roll Philly there. And then their top line, they're going to go, Pun, Laser, Silky. I mean, the way those three are going, I mean, good luck with that. So I think if it does go 7, I think Philly wins. But my official prediction is Tampa Bay in 6. But I do not be surprised at all if this goes 7 and if Philly wins. So that's my official prediction. Again, no hate to any of these guys. This is going to be a fantastic series regardless. But I do think Tampa Bay takes it in 6. Okay? So there's my prediction for that series. All right? So now we will switch over to the West. We'll take on Detroit versus Los Angeles. So again, we'll go back to the comparisons here. We'll go to the West. So just looking at the seasons, they're head-to-head. So Detroit was 5-1 against LA. LA was 1-4-1. So they got a win in there, obviously, and then there was an overtime loss. Detroit came in second in the West. LA is 5th. Okay, so interesting to see that there are no 1 seeds remaining. San Jose lost to LA in the last round. And like I mentioned earlier, Boston lost to Toronto earlier in the first round. So for Detroit, how did they get here? So their first round, they played Nashville, the 7th seed Nashville. They won in 6. And then the second round, they swept Vegas. And they were the 3rd seed. So Detroit with a big-time win over Vegas in that series. I don't think, and not many people probably thought there would be a sweep, but that was the case. And then for LA, in their first round, they played my team, Dallas. They beat us in 7. Actually, that is not right. What is going on? No, this is not right. Oops, sorry. I'm changing this live. Sorry. Oh wait, no, this is right. They beat Edmonton. There we go. Sorry about that. I'll have to change that in my in the graphic I made. Shoot. All right, whatever. I was gonna say we played Vegas. Anyway, sorry about that. First round for LA, they beat up on Edmonton in 7, and then they beat San Jose in 5 in the second round. So they took out the 4th seed and the 1st seed. So this is how we got to 2 and 5 in terms of the seeding. So Detroit, they have been scoring a ton in these playoffs. They have a .80 goals for per game, only giving up 2.4. So they've essentially doubled their goals for to their goals against. So they have a plus 24 goal differential in these playoffs. For the Kings, they have a 3.17 goals for per game, and then a 2.08 goals against per game. So they have a plus 13 goal differential. So now we look at some of the players. So this is going to be a high-scoring series, I think. We have two of the top point leaders in these playoffs. Gringo for Detroit, he's got 23 points, and then Baslin right behind him with 22 points. Hartless for Detroit, he has an 86 defensive rating. Mr. Torts has a 94.29 defensive rating, which is excellent. And then in between the pipes, we have Big Cheese for Detroit. He's 7-2, the 2.11 goals against, and an 8.75 save percentage. And for LA, it's going to be there. I believe it's a tandem between Sinks and Dark Times. I threw Sinks in here. He's 4-2 with a 2.0 goals against and an 8.82 save percentage. And we'll also look at Dark Times' stats in these playoffs as well, because we'll likely see both of them at some point in this series. So we'll go to the playoff stats again, just to talk about Detroit and LA now. So we'll go playoffs. So you see Gringo at the top here. So we'll start with Detroit, my former team, the Red Wings. So a lot of players showing up in these games. So Gringo leading the way, like I said, 23 points in 4 games. Morpheus, 18 points in 5 games. Joker, he's got 14 points in 6 games. 13 and 4 for Slothster. Heartless with 11 assists in 5 games for him. Snake has 10 points in 5 games played, including that game winner in Game 4 against Vegas in overtime. And we got Hemsky/Smith. He's got 6 points in 3 games. Charmander's got 6 assists. Scarface, he's got 6 points as well. Crikey, Devil Dogs, Pastor down here as well. So up and down the lineup scoring and contributions. A lot of depth in Detroit. We'll look at their defense, of course, too, because I think this is going to be a big hitter in this series as well. Whoever's defense plays better will win, I think, because both teams have high-powered offenses for sure. You look at Gringo and Baslin for each of those teams leading the way for those clubs. But let me look sort of by points. Let me go by defense here. So Pastor of Disaster, he is always a very solid, steady defenseman. Doesn't play a ton, but when he does, he's very steady, very solid back there. And not shocking that he leads the team in defensive rating for the defenseman. Heartless, who was their deadline acquisition, he got traded for me. This has been a real solid pickup for Snake in Detroit. In 5 playoff games, he's got 11 points and an 86 defensive rating, so very, very solid. Scarface, he plays back there as well, an 81 defensive rating for him, along with 6 points. So you see these guys at Devil Dogs, he was an offseason acquisition. Charmander, he drafted a couple years ago. These guys also contributing as well. So you see these 5 defensemen here that Detroit can run out. Any one of them, they can really play very well and play shutdown defense for Detroit. So I think, again, this is kind of like Philly and Tampa Bay. It'll be LA's offense. Can they contain Baslin and their top line? And if they can, it gives their second line a chance to really go at it and try to take some games. And if they can contain Baslin in that first line, and they can steal a game, if they all, like, for example, if Baslin and the LA first line, they play all 3 games Wednesday night, and Detroit is only down 2-1, right? Well, now it gives the line on Thursday night, just gives them a shot, because now if you win 2 out of 3 or all 3, now you're looking good. In a game 7, that's a little dicey because not anyone can play again. But if you can sweep the night on Thursday night, you're moving on to the Cup final. But if they can take 2 out of 3 Wednesday night, that would be huge for them, because then they'd only need 1, obviously, on the Thursday night, and especially if Baslin plays the first night and their top line plays all 3 games and they take 2 out of 3, you're putting yourself in a great spot to win. We'll look at the LA defense in just a second here. So let's go to Kings. We'll look at all their forwards and their point scores. So Baslin, Koladov and Washko. These are the big dogs for these guys. 22 points, 11 points, 10 points, respectively, for those three. And then you go MLN, Drysdale, another solid player for the Kings. Mr. Torts has played lights-out defense for them in these playoffs. And then you got Hutch invited, Lone Wolf, McNaughty, and Reaper down here as well. So let's just go to the defense here. Let's see. We'll sort by just the points, and then we'll look at... Actually, we'll go by defense first. So this is what I'm saying. Mr. Torts playing lights-out defense. 94.29 defensive rating. That is crazy. In 7 games. So it's not even like he played 1 or 2 games. He's played 7. So this is not no Mickey Mouse numbers here. This is real solid work. You look at, again, the takeaways to interceptions. He almost identical numbers in giveaways and interceptions, but he's got 30 takeaways. So, I mean, real good stuff from him. You go down the list here. McNaughty, he's got 85. Lone Wolf's got 80. And Invited's got 78. Reaper's only played 2 games, and he's a 70. But you look at these main 4 guys up top here. It's very good, especially these top 2 in particular, 94 and an 85. They're not scrubs. So it's not like Detroit will have a walk in the park against LA's defense. I mean, they're in the conference final for a reason. But at the same time, LA's game is all about their offense. We go back here. They score. They play excellent defense. I'll give them that. They play excellent defense. But if they can get going on their offense, I watched their games against San Jose in the second round, and it all runs through Baslin. I mean, I felt like I was saying his name every 30 seconds when they were scoring and putting up goals. They played very good defense, and that's also thanks to their goaltending as well. But I think their key to win this series if you're LA is to put up goals, because Detroit's going to play solid defense. Detroit's game has always been team defense. If you look at their stats, right? We'll go to the Red Wings up here. If you go playoffs, right, and you sort by defense here, just to have it a little bit on both. So obviously you have the top 4, the defensemen are right here, but then you have Snake, Joker, Charmander, defenseman, and then Gringo. They're all hovering around 70 or above. So that's 6 guys right there? 7 guys, 8 guys right there. So, it really is all around about the team defense. I know Slaughter, his numbers don't really prove it or show it, but he plays excellent. He's one of the best two-way forwards I've ever seen in my life in this game. He's excellent in his two-way game, but the numbers don't show it, but he's sneaky good on getting back on defense and stuff like that. So now let's look at the goaltending stats, because I did mention this briefly earlier. I believe LA runs a bit of a tandem in net with Dark Times and Sinks. So we'll take a look at both of those. But Big Cheese, he's the main guy in the NHL. You might see Irish Oddity for a game or 2 here and there. I think he's played already 1 or 2 games in these playoffs against Nashville. He played 1 game, and they won that game. But Big Cheese, he's the main guy. If he's available, he's likely going to play. He's got 2.11 goals against and an 8.75 save percentage. I mean, he's the man over there. So he's awesome. Very good player, very good goalie. And same with the Irish. I mean, the Detroit's goalie depth is very good. Irish in the AHL. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. But for the Griffins, I mean, he's the main guy down there for the AHL. So whichever way they have to go in net. And Irish and Big and Mac too as well. Those guys run a great tandem for when Irish and Mac are splitting the duties down there. But Big Cheese, he's the main man in net in the NHL. So look for him in the majority of these games, if not all of them. So now we'll check out LA on their side. So yeah, it's an even split between Dark Times and Sinks. They both have 6 games. Both are 4-2. Very similar numbers here, and they're both very good. 2.17 goals against for Dark Times, 2 flat for Sinks, 8.69 save percentage for Dark Times, so 8.69, and then an 8.82 for Sinks in terms of save percentage. So you can't really go wrong here if you're LA. Both goalies will give you a great chance to win. So again, what does this series come down to, and what do these teams have to do to win? If you're Detroit, you just have to contain Baslin. If you can take 1 or 2 games in the nights he's playing, in the games he's playing, you give yourself a great chance to win. And that's not a diss on LA's depth guys either, but Baslin is such a good player that anytime he's on the ice, he gives you a great chance to win. So if Detroit can contain him and they can find a way to win with him in the lineup, I mean, they're going to be looking at moving on to the Cup final. And if you're LA, you of course you want to shut down Gringo, but you have to keep playing up the great defense, and you're going to have to grind out some games here because Detroit, you see Gringo, you see Joker, they're putting up some solid points, but they play a big defensive style game. So what you're going to have to do if you're LA is find a way to win the 2-1 games, find a way to win the 3-2 games. And I know they can do it. It's just a matter of going out and taking care of business, and they can. It's just a matter of doing. So my prediction for this series, again, this is not going to be, I mean, it might be, but I don't think this will be a sweep. I don't think this is going to be in 5. It's going to be, I think, again, you're going to see games late Thursday night and potentially Friday here. However, I think that Detroit wins in 6. I think the Red Wings can get it done. Just like with Tampa, I think defense wins you championships, and I think Detroit's style of play, the team defense, that will lead them to victory. LA is a fantastic team, and again, I don't want it to come across as doubting them because they are very much capable. Again, and this is especially, it's funny, LA and Philly are similar, and this would be an exciting Cup final, LA Philly, if it were to happen. But I want you to think about this for a second. If LA finds themselves in a Game 7 situation where anyone can play, I mean, you're talking about Baslin for sure, and then could be Koldov, could it be Washko, Mr. Torts. I'm sure he's a lock. If he's around, he's going to play. You saw his stats; his defensive numbers are outstanding. I think LA, if it goes 7, LA has a great chance at winning because I just think their top players will come and shine. But again, Detroit has such good depth. I think that will outshine LA. So don't be surprised to see LA take a 2-1 series lead. I think Detroit will find a way to get it done, and I think they win in 6. But don't be again. I don't want to. I'm not trying to doubt LA. They, like I said, Game 7 they might win, but I do think Detroit takes it in 6. Okay, so I'm predicting a Detroit versus Tampa Bay Cup final. Okay. Now, since I've said that, it'll likely be Philadelphia and LA. No, my luck or my gift or curse for some. But we'll see what happens. Regardless, I think these are going to be outstanding series. I know if we scroll down real quick here, like these are all like quick series, like no Game 6s, let alone Game 7s. I think we'll see both of these series go to 6, maybe 7. And Game 7, anything can happen in a Game 7. Certainly, I don't think these will be sweeps. I think we're now at the point in these playoffs where I think the sweeps are probably done. These are the Final Four for a reason. And they might not have like the greatest regular season stats. It's all about getting hot at the right time. And certainly Philadelphia has gotten hot at the right time. Tampa Bay has had, I think, the schedule and the reseeding has fallen a bit in Tampa Bay's favor. So, and I also think Philadelphia is probably a bit underseeded at this point. You're probably looking at Philadelphia being probably a 4 seed, I would say. The way they played these last few weeks here to a month. Paul has made some good trades for Philadelphia, and so I think you're looking at Philly being a bit underseeded. They had a really bad start to the year, but they've really turned around with some trades. They brought in Pun, they bring in Rudes. So I think at this point, Philly's a bit underseeded, and it is what it is. You can't change that at this point, but don't let the numbers in front of the logos deceive you. These are good teams. All 4 of these teams are great teams. I think Tampa Bay, like I said, I think playing Pittsburgh in the first round, and then you see Toronto upset Boston, and now all of a sudden you play them because Philly upset Hartford, and so the top 2 after the first round, Tampa Bay looks in the mirror and finds himself as the top seed in the East. So now they play the worst team now that's remaining. So I think the bracket definitely fell in the favor of Tampa Bay. The reseeding helped them out the most, I think. And so when the hardest team the quote unquote toughest team they've played so far in this playoffs has been Pittsburgh in terms of the seeding, have they really been tested yet? I don't think so, and that's no offense to those other teams. I just don't think Tampa Bay has been tested or really challenged. Toronto gave them a good spanking in Game 4, 7-0. That probably woke them up a bit, but I don't think Tampa Bay has been truly tested as of yet, and I think Philly will give them a great test. And over in the West, like I said, I think Detroit wins in 6. However, LA has been tested. Okay, they have beaten up. Edmonton took them 7 games, so they had to win a Game 7, and they went out and did it. And then, because Edmonton's a very deep team, a lot like Detroit in some ways, a lot of depth, a lot of good players, and that was in the first round. After that, they had to take on San Jose, the top team in the West, and they got it done. So I think LA's unlike Tampa Bay. They're battle tested. They're ready to go. And with Detroit, they a bit of adversity against Nashville. Hungry Camper kind of went on a bit of a heater there for a couple games, but they were able to close that out. And then they were able to pretty much take care of a depleted Vegas team. Depleted. I say depleted, I mean there's no Alex Skies there, no OP Ninja. Run Like Hell she did her best, but same with Dorito, Presti, same thing. Vegas still had some good players, but not the same team that you saw in the regular season. A lot of trade deadline moves for them, and they were able to get it done. So, like I said, Detroit in 6 and Tampa Bay in 6. That is for the NHL. So now let me get a drink real quick, and we'll move on to the AHL. Much better. Much better. So we'll switch gears. We'll take a look at the AHL. So again, we have in the West, we have Grand Rapids against Ontario and Syracuse taking on Utica. So there's a pair of Cinderella stories taking place here. We have the Reign and the Comets having a bit of a Cinderella run here. So I'll bring up the bracket again because I do want to hammer this point home about these two teams. So again, if you look here, we'll start in the East. So Utica, they're taking on Providence in the first round, and I believe they were down 3-1. Well, actually, we can look at that. They were down 3-1, I believe. Yeah, so Providence won the first. Oh, they reverse swept them. Oh my God. Yeah. So wow, that's unbelievable. I did not realize they were. I thought they had won. I thought these two were flipped. Okay, so Utica comes back. They reverse sweep the Bruins. However, there is an FF in here. But they won Game 7, 11-5. I mean, holy crap. So they're able to win 4 straight here in a reverse sweep against Providence. So that's awesome for them. And then in the second round, so now, again, they're the 7th seed. 8th seed Wilkes-Barre, they got defeated in 5. So now you have Hershey against Utica in the second round here. And Hershey gets swept by Utica, swept Hershey. And they're all very close games, 1 goal, 2 goals, 1 goal. I think there might have been an overtime game in Game 2 or 4 here. But you see now Utica finds himself reverse sweeping Providence and then actually sweeping Hershey. So if you look at it, they've actually won 8 in a row. Unbelievable. And then the other one, Ontario. So they also have been on a bit of a Cinderella run themselves. We're still figuring out this Game 1. I have no clue what we're going to do with that. I'll have to talk to Snake and Punisher about that. But they won this game. Game 1 was a win for them. But anyway, we'll start in the first round for them. So where'd they go? Right here. So they take down second-seeded San Diego. They beat them in 5. Okay, you see a close game here. Pulling away here. Really pulled away in this one. Oh, wait, no, they lost this game. They lost Game 1, and they rattled off 4 straight. Sorry, I was looking at it wrong. They rattled off four straight here, so they really won this one, Closer game, and then it's a couple closer games at the end there, but they were able to get it done. So they beat the second-seeded San Diego Gulls, just like in the East. The 7th seed takes down second-seed Providence, and then they move to play the top-seeded Henderson Silver Knights, and they beat them in 5. Another FF in there because of an illegal player without eligibility. I think Rose Petal Killer had a bunch of NHL games played. He wasn't allowed. And so that allowed them to win in 5. So Ontario and Utica making a bit of a Cinderella run. We'll see if they can meet up in the finals here. So we'll take a look at Syracuse and Utica first. We'll take a look at their stats and everything like that. So we'll go to player leaders and we'll go to AHL. And it's interesting because Tampa Bay, there are actually 3 organizations right now that have both NHL and AHL in the playoff and still left in the playoffs. Tampa Bay and Syracuse, Detroit and Grand Rapids, and then LA, Ontario. So it's interesting. You see these same organizations with both teams still remaining. So we'll check out the skater stats first. We'll go to Syracuse. So you might see some familiar names that were in the Tampa Bay preview here. I'm looking for Crunch right here. So no touches. I highlighted him earlier. He's got 25 points. Or did I? No, I have not looked at this yet. Sorry. We'll look at this first. Sorry, I just did this. So look at the tail of the tape here. You see, Syracuse has 5-1 against Utica. Utica's 4-1. Syracuse, like Tampa Bay, finished 3rd in the East. Like I said, 7th in the East for Utica. We just went over these 2 series for them. They take down Providence, take down Hershey. For Syracuse, they defeated Chicago in a sweep, and they took down Laval in Game 7. Now, in these playoffs, Syracuse is scoring at a 4.64 goals for per game, and they're only giving up 2.91 goals against per game. And for Utica, it's pretty boom or bust. As you can see, they have a 4.45 goals for per game and a 4.18 goals against the game. So very much high scoring games. You're probably looking at 6-5, 5-4. That's that type of stuff going on. Crunch have a plus 19 goal differential. Comets have plus 14. So for the point scorer, so no touches for Syracuse. He has 25 points. And for Utica, it's Orbit Duck. Orbit Duck 1-2-3. He's got 29 points. So real solid contributions from him. Trigonomics, we saw his name pop up earlier for Tampa Bay. He has an 86.67 defensive rating for the Crunch. And then Baked 10 has a 66.8 defensive rating for the Comets. And then in between the pipes, you see Metro 88. He's at 4-1 with a 3.80 goals against and a 7.79 save percentage. And then for the Comets, you see Jiffy Jeff 2012. He's 5-3 with a 3.25 goals against and an 8.43 save percentage. So these are the tails of the tape here. Some key stats for these teams. So now we look at the skater stats again this time. Now we have all that information. Again, like I said, no touches has 25 points. It's Your Boy Fatal has 14 points. Ramathorn, he's got 12. Deem Daddy's got 11. So Swiper No Swiper, he's got 10 points. Shelfie, in the couple games he's played, he's got 10 points in only 2 games. Prodigy Freebird's got 10 points. No Blood, he's played a couple games down here. He's got 9 points at lane 55. He's got a couple games in here as well. So you see all these guys, a lot of depth here in the AHL. Like I said, some overlap with Tampa Bay as well as they go on their cup run. So we'll just take a look at the defenseman like we usually do here. We'll take a look at the defenseman now. Cornsby's played only 1 game. He's got a 90, so we'll just kind of take that out. That doesn't really count. Trigonomics, he's got an 8.67 in 3 games. Lane 55's got an 85 in 4 games. Sniper No Swiper, he's got 75.83. Death Shark, he's put a few games on here. He's one of those guys that plays both. 73.75, and Ramathorn's got 73. So pretty solid numbers for Syracuse here. A lot of depth, as you can see, mainly 5 main guys in here. Sniper No Swiper, I think he's an AHL main down here. He's playing very well. 10 points for a defenseman is great. 75.83. Defensive rating is very serviceable. Because a lot of these guys are rotating in and out for the NHL and AHL, so it's tough to find chemistry with a singular partner. But I'm sure they do the best they can down there. So now we'll take a look at the Comets and see what they are going on with. So we have Orbit Duck, Delusions, and Jordy Spams. These guys are really tearing it up for the Comets here. Definitely their first line. They have 7, 7, and 5 games played respectively, 29, 26, and 22 points. So they're just lighting it up against the competition they go against. Some other guys have played a few games down here. You see Rampage and Shamrock, a couple of former Detroit guys. getting some playoff action in here. So it's good to see that. And we'll check out their defenseman. So it's mainly Baked 10. He's I mentioned him earlier. He's got a 66.8 defensive rating. And then you got Sens Rule, another former Detroit guy, and Big and Beefy, both with 5 games each. So it looks like they're splitting time with Baked, and they have a mid-60s, low 60s defensive rating. So overall, I think Syracuse definitely has a bit more of a depth advantage, I would say. And then we'll look at the goaltending as well. We go to player leaders. I think, like I said, I think Syracuse has a bit more depth with skaters. Now, we'll take a look at the goalies. And it's always tough because you're also balancing the NHL. Well, Utica doesn't have to worry about that because New Jersey did not make it. But if we go to the crunch, you see it's a bit of a carousel of goalies here. You have Metro. He's got the most games played at 5. Random Gamer has got 3. Ramathorn's got 3. So you see a bit of all over the place here. But you see these goalies have pretty solid stats. I mean, Metro, let's see, I just want to look at his box score really quick, or his player card in the playoffs. Whoops. No, this is good. So 4-1 in these playoffs. He's given up 5 goals. He gave 5 once and 4 once. So that's probably why you're seeing a little bit lower numbers in terms of the stats compared to Random Gamer and Ramathorn. These 2 guys down here are giving you great numbers as well. 2.33 and an 8.73 for Random Gamer, and 2.67 and an 8.55 for Ramathorn. So really solid numbers up and down here for the Syracuse goalies. And like I said, Metro getting the bulk of the starts, but a solid mix of games played between these 3. And then for Utica, we go to the Comets here. You see Jiffy Jeff getting the majority of the starts. Jody Spams and Rampage each getting a start themselves. But we're looking at just Jiffy Jeff here, 5-3. He's got a 3.25 goals against and an 8.43 save percentage. So good numbers for the Comets goalie here, Jiffy Jeff. So I guess everything else in these series, it's going to come down to the depth. I think Syracuse's depth is going to propel them in this series, and I think they probably win in 6. Utica's their top line is very good, but I think Syracuse will find a way to get things done and try to contain them. Because like I said, they're solid. Those 3, that trio for Utica is very good. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Standings. I want player leaders. I'll go back to those stats again. Overall, if you look in just the overall playoffs, you see Orbit Duck. He's got 5. He's 5th in the league at 29. Delusions at 26. He's 7th. And then, where's the last guy? Oh, he's down here. Jody Spams. He's got 22. So, I mean, those 3 guys can definitely put up points, but I do think the depth of Syracuse, especially on the defensive end of things, and you combine with like no touches, he's very good in his own right. 25 points is 8th overall in the playoffs of the AHL. So I think him and his line mates will be able to score some goals and make some things happen. So it might be a high-scoring series, and that might benefit Utica, but Syracuse's defense, I think, will be able to win them a couple games combined with their goaltending. I think Syracuse gets it done in 6. So that's my official prediction in the East. So now we will shift gears now to the final series of the conference finals. It's Grand Rapids taking on Ontario. So tail of the tape for this series. You're looking at Grand Rapids here. They're 5-1 this season against Ontario. They finished 4th in the West. Meanwhile, Ontario was 1-5 against Grand Rapids. They're 7th in the West. Again, we went over earlier. They took down second-seeded Goals and then the first-seeded Silver Knights. Meanwhile, for Grand Rapids, they took down Milwaukee. That's the National AHL. They took them down in a sweep 4-0. And then they took down Bakersfield 4-2 and the 6 games there. So you look here. I mean, Grand Rapids is scoring the lights out. They have 5.30 goals for per game, and a 3.10 goals against. So, I mean, they're lightened up. But the same could be said for Ontario here. They have a 4.33 goals for per game and a 2.56 goals against. So, playing a bit better defense here. They're some of the leading scorers. Diamond Supply 90's got 33 points. Maggot has 34 points. Elo's got a 79 defensive rating. Snipper Jaybird's got a 74.38 defensive rating. And then in the nets, we have Mac01. He's 4-2 with a 2.83 goals against and an 8.40 save percentage. And Fellas Are Hot. He's 4-1, 2.40 goals against and an 8.81 save percentage. So some really good numbers here for these goalies. We'll take a look at the skater stats now. So we'll start with Grand Rapids. We'll go to the Griffins here. So like I said, they're scoring a ton. You have Diamond Supply, 33 points in 7 games. Gringo, splitting his time between the AHL and the NHL. He's got 29 points in 5 games, nearly 6 points per game. That is insane. Slother, another guy, he splits his time, 16 points in 5 games. You got Spritzy, 13 points in 4 games. V-City, he had a great regular season for Grand Rapids. He's got 12 points in 6 games. Elo, on the back end, getting done in 10 games, got 11 points. And then you got Triton, Brymac, Pastor playing a couple games for the AHL. Scarface has a game in there. So you see these guys, they got 10 guys with games played. Scarface, you can knock him out. He's only got 1. So these main 9 in here, getting it done for Grand Rapids, especially these top 2 guys, Diamond Supply and Gringo, really putting up the points. Slother, Spritzy, V-City, those guys have given good contributions as well. So we'll look at the defensive numbers here. Like I said, I'm gonna knock out. Oh yeah, see, I would knock out Scarface and V-City. I didn't realize V-City played a game at defense, but I would just pretend these 2 are not even here. These 3 main guys are getting it done, especially Elo. He's played 10 games. He's got a 79 rating. Pastor's got 81.25. King Triton, my guy Triton, 4 games played, 85. I think I put Elo in the tail of the tape because he's got 10 games played, so he's played the bulk of the games and he's got a 79 defensive rating. So. If you're wondering why I did that, just because of the amount of games played. But you look at some of the point totals. Triton's got 7 assists. Pastor's got 6 assists. Like I said earlier, Elo's got 11 points. So some good contributions from the Blue Liners in Grand Rapids. Some really solid defense being played, along with some point production as well. So we can now shift gears. We'll look at Ontario here. So you'll see you got Maggot, JMO, and Next Join each all with 20 points or more, and just 8 games, which is very, very impressive. And then you have Snipper Jaybird, Sriracha, Reaper, and McNaughty. These guys filling in the back on some depth scoring as well, which is nice to see. So this is their main lineup here. They have 7 guys who have played a game. You're looking at these top 3 as a forward line, and they're really getting it done. You look at their defensive stats here. We'll go games played. We'll look at defensive rating. So Reaper's got 2 games played and a 97.5 defensive rating, which is unbelievable, but only 2 games. McNaughty, same thing, 2 games played, only 78.5 rating. You look at Snipper Jaybird. This is the guy that mainly plays. Snipper Jaybird and Sriracha have 8 and 4 games played. They have 74 defensive rating and a 72.75. So that's what the defensive numbers look like. You take a look at some of these giveaways, takeaways, interceptions. Some solid numbers here for Sriracha. Jaybird, not so much. It's just under 1-to-1, so definitely needs some improvement there, less giveaways. But overall, still solid for them. They're getting contributions elsewhere as well. So now we'll look at the goaltending matchups here. So we'll go to player leaders, AHL, playoffs, goaltending stats. Here we go. So we'll look at first the Griffins. So I mentioned this earlier. Mac and Irish pretty much splitting the nets here. Mac has a couple more starts than Irish, so we'll look at his stats first. 4-2, 2.83 goals against, and an 8.40 if you round up there. Save percentage. And then for Irish, he's 4-0, so no losses. 3.25 goals against and an 8.23 save percentage for him. So, I mean, if you're Grand Rapids, you're playing great team defense in front of your goalies, and your goalies are giving you great chances to win. So, these are real solid numbers for Grand Rapids, and you'd expect that to continue in this next series, because that's how you're going to win, again, by playing that solid team defense like the NHL team plays. And if you check down on the Reign, you see Fellas Are Hot. He's got 5 games played. Reaper's got 3 games played. But for Fellas Are Hot, he's 4-0. He's got a 2.40 goals against and an 8.81 save percentage. And then for Reaper, 2-1, 3.67 goals against and an 8.41 save percentage. So again, similar numbers to the Grand Rapids goalies. So who do I think is going to win this game? Or this series? So I think you're not seeing a sweep. I don't think. You might see the series end in 5, but I think it goes 6. Okay, and I definitely think Grand Rapids will take this series. I think the Cinderella story ends here for Ontario. They've put up a great fight so far, but I think the depth and the solid depth that Grand Rapids has on the up front on the forwards, and then after Elo and Triton and Pastor and maybe a bit of Scarface here as well, I think Grand Rapids will just overpower the Reign, and I think their Cinderella story ends here. Now, I will say this is Utica and Ontario are very similarly constructed, because if you go back to the stats again, we go to the AHL, go to the playoffs. Go here, you go down here, go to the Reign, okay? You see, they're very top heavy. You see Maggot, JMO, and Next Join. It's just like this guy's in Utica. Jordy Spams, who else is Delusions, and somebody else. Fuck, I'll miss it. I forget his name. It's the guy that has the most. I'm forgetting his name's missing me. I should know this. Orbit Duck. He's got the most points for them, yeah. So you think about it, right? You go to the Reign, you look at their point totals, 34, 21, 20 for these 3 guys. This is their top line. And then you go to Utica, right? You go down to the Comets, and you see 29, 26, 22, and then even 14 for Bake to the defenseman. But just focus on the forwards here for a second, because they're very similar. So how Utica, like I said, I also picked Syracuse to win too. So I'm predicting a Grand Rapids Syracuse Cup final. But how can Syracuse and Utica extend their Cinderella runs? Well, it goes through their forwards. If Utica and Ontario, how can they extend their Cinderella runs? Basically, they have to break through their opposition's defensive depth. There are no games played limits in the AHL. Oh, excuse me. Holy shit. That was the water and dinner. Excuse me. There are no games played limits in the AHL. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these guys play a bit more games than in the NHL. So, actually, yeah, it's like 7-7-5, and a lot of these point totals are higher. You see 10 games down here as well. So these guys can just keep playing, and if they can get it done, right, if they just keep playing the way they have, and they can outlast the defensive depth of their opposition, that gives them a great chance to win. But I think, like I said, all this whole video, I think defense wins you championships. And I just think Grand Rapids and Syracuse have the better D, and I think they advance. However, it is a shame if these runs end, because it's been fun to watch. Everyone loves a good Cinderella run, and you actually get 2 in the AHL, which is really cool. So I think at the end of the day, I do think it's going to be a Grand Rapids and Syracuse final in the AHL, and then in the NHL, I'm predicting a Tampa Bay versus Detroit Cup final. So that's interesting, because that means both organizations would be playing each other in both leagues, which would be pretty cool. So with all of that in mind, we turn back to the brackets one last time, because just to show it off again. So again, you see where we're at. This is how we stand in the NHL right now. So again, I predict Detroit and Tampa to move on to meet in the final. And then in the AHL, you see this is where we're at again. You see Grand Rapids and Syracuse move on to meet in the Cup final. So again, thank you all for tuning in. I know this is an hour-long video. I figured it would be long because I had a lot of things I wanted to say. So thanks again for tuning in, for all the positive feedback, the negative feedback. Any kind of feedback is always appreciated. I always would like to do these a little bit better if I can. So also want to wish all the teams good luck this week, and I'll be watching. It should be awesome to watch. Definitely some good series in store for us this week. Unfortunately, I'm recording this on a Sunday night, so we got to wait a couple more days. But yeah, that's all I got. So again, thanks everyone for watching, and I will talk to you again soon.